Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon and watched the stars through the massive viewing window. He had been staring at the same constellation for 3 hours now, waiting for something that might never come. The silence on the bridge felt heavy, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the quiet beeping of monitoring equipment. Lisa Hayes walked up beside him, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She carried a data pad in her hands, and Jake could see from her face that the news was not good. Lisa had been his second in command for 8 years, and he had learned to read her expressions like a book. "Still nothing from Earth Command," Lisa said quietly. "The communication blackout has been going on for 6 days now. No word from any of our colonies either." Jake nodded slowly. The silence from Earth was troubling, but what worried him more was the complete lack of contact from the other human settlements. 12 colonies spread across 4 star systems, and not one of them was responding to calls. Something was very wrong. Ben Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station near the back of the bridge. His dark hair was messy from running his hands through it, a habit he had when he was nervous. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission. It's coming through on the emergency frequency." Jake turned around quickly. "Put it on the main screen." The viewing window flickered and changed to show a communications display. Static filled the screen for a moment, then cleared to reveal a face that made Jake's stomach drop. High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire appeared on the screen, his reptilian features cold and emotionless. "Attention all human vessels and colonies," Vextar began, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "By order of the Galactic Confederation Council, humanity has been declared a threat to galactic peace and stability. You have 72 standard hours to evacuate all colonies and return to your home system. Any human presence outside the Sol system after this time limit will be considered an act of war." The message continued, but Jake barely heard the rest. His mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. The Galactic Confederation had always been suspicious of human expansion, but this was beyond anything he had expected. Lisa grabbed his arm. "Jake, they can't be serious. We have families on New Terra. Children, elderly people who can't travel quickly. 72 hours isn't enough time." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, professionals who had dedicated their lives to building something better among the stars. Now they were being told to abandon everything they had worked for. "Ben, get me a connection to New Terra Colony," Jake ordered. "I need to speak with the colony administrator immediately." Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. After a few moments, he shook his head. "I can't get through, Captain. Something is jamming our communications." Jake felt a cold fear growing in his chest. If they couldn't communicate with the colony, how were they supposed to organize an evacuation? How were they supposed to warn people what was coming? "Captain," came a voice from the navigation station. "We're receiving another transmission. This one is from Admiral Susan Clark." Jake knew Susan well. She commanded the escort fleet that protected the human colonies, and she was one of the toughest military officers he had ever met. If anyone could figure out what to do in this situation, it would be her. Susan's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired and angry, but her voice was steady and professional. "All colony ships, this is Admiral Clark commanding the escort fleet. We have confirmed reports that Confederation forces are moving into position around all human colonies. This is not a negotiation. They mean to force us out, and they have the firepower to do it." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. The Confederation had always claimed to be peaceful, but they were showing their true nature now. They were using military force to drive humans from their homes. "We're beginning immediate evacuation procedures," Susan continued. "All colony ships are to move to their designated colonies and begin loading civilians. Transport everything you can, but people come first. We don't know if we'll ever be coming back." The transmission ended, and Jake turned to Lisa. "Set course for New Terra. Maximum speed." Lisa nodded and moved to the navigation controls. "Course set. We'll arrive in 18 hours." As the New Horizon changed direction and began accelerating toward the colony, Jake thought about all the people depending
on him.
Families who had left Earth years ago to build new lives. Scientists and engineers who were working on projects that could benefit all of humanity. Children who had never seen Earth and considered New Terra their home. Ben looked up from his station, again. "Captain, I'm detecting something strange in our data archives. Someone has been accessing our files, going through records of our expansion activities." "What kind of records?" Jake asked. "Everything. Terraforming data, mineral surveys, population reports. It's like someone was gathering intelligence on our colonies for years." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a sudden decision by the Confederation. They had been planning this for a long time, studying human activities, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Lisa came back to stand beside him. "Jake, what are we going to do? Even if we can't evacuate everyone, where are we supposed to go? Earth can't support all the colony populations." Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, Confederation fleets were moving into position around human worlds. They thought they were dealing with a weak species that would simply give up when threatened. They thought humans would run away with their tails between their legs. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "We're going to evacuate our people," Jake said quietly. "And then we're going to show the Confederation what happens when you corner a species that refuses to stay cornered." The New Horizon continued its journey toward New Terra, carrying with it the hopes and fears of everyone aboard. Behind them, the stars seemed to watch silently, as if waiting to see what would happen next. In 72 hours, everything would change, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 3 weeks had passed since the evacuation began, and the human fleet was finally approaching the edge of the Sol system. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the scanner displays that showed their convoy of 12 colony ships and 8 escort vessels. Behind them lay everything they had built among the stars, now abandoned to the Confederation. Lisa Hayes worked at the communications station, coordinating with the other ships in the fleet. The evacuation had been successful, but barely. They had managed to save most of the people, but they had to leave behind years of work and countless personal belongings. Families were crowded into spaces never meant to hold so many people. "Captain," Ben Rodriguez called from his engineering station, "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors, multiple contacts bearing directly ahead." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "How many contacts?" Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls, and his face went pale. "More than 500 ships, Captain. They're arranged in a blockade formation across our approach to Earth." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tactical display of the area ahead. Jake stared at the screen in disbelief. The Confederation hadn't just driven them out of their colonies, they had set a trap. Hundreds of warships waited between the human fleet and their home. Admiral Susan Clark's voice came through the communication system from her flagship Determination. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark. We're detecting a massive Confederation fleet, directly ahead. This is Fleet Admiral Zekthul of the Chronari Hegemony. They're demanding that we surrender our escort vessels before proceeding to Earth." Jake grabbed the communications microphone. "Admiral, they can't be serious. These are civilian transports. We're not a military threat." Susan's voice was grim when she replied, "Captain Morrison, I don't think they ever intended to let us reach Earth. This whole evacuation was designed to get us all in one place where they could finish us." Dr. Amanda Foster, the fleet's chief scientist, looked up from her research station. She had been studying Confederation communications for days, trying to understand their real intentions. "Captain, I've been analyzing their fleet movements over the past month. They have similar blockades set up around every major hyperspace route leading away from human space. We're not just trapped, we're surrounded." The reality of their situation began to sink in. The Confederation had never intended to simply exile humanity. They wanted to eliminate them entirely, and they had been planning this for a long time. The evacuation order was just a way to gather all the humans in one place where they could be destroyed. "Incoming transmission from the Confederation fleet," Lisa reported. The main screen changed to show Fleet Admiral Zekthul, a tall Chronari, with the distinctive bone ridges and pale skin of his species. His military uniform was covered with medals and decorations, and his eyes held the cold confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Human vessels, Zekthul began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. You have violated the terms of your evacuation by bringing military assets into this system. Your escort vessels constitute a threat to galactic security. You will surrender them immediately or face the consequences. Captain Paul Johnson of the escort vessel Freedom appeared on a split-screen display. Admiral Zekthul, these ships are here to protect civilian transports. We pose no threat to anyone. Zekthul's expression didn't change. The presence of human military vessels in any system outside your homeworld is now considered an act of war. You have 5 minutes to surrender, or we will open fire. The transmission ended, leaving the human fleet in stunned silence. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had families aboard the transport ships, children and elderly people who had done nothing wrong except be born human. Admiral Clark, Jake called over the communication system. What are our options? Susan's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. We're outnumbered more than 60 to 1, Captain. Our escort ships are good, but they're not miracle workers. Dr. Foster suddenly looked up from her station, her face excited. Captain, I'm detecting something interesting. The Confederation ships are arranged in a very specific pattern. It's designed to prevent any ship from escaping, but it also creates some tactical weaknesses. Before Jake could ask what she meant, the space around them erupted in weapons fire. Zekthul had decided not to wait for the 5 minutes to expire. Bright energy beams and missile trails filled the darkness as the Confederation fleet opened fire on the human vessels. 3 transport ships were hit in the first salvo. Jake watched in horror as the vessels Paradise Lost, New Hope, and Freedom's Dream exploded in balls of fire and debris. 15,000 people died in those first few seconds, including families with children who would never see their parents again. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Admiral Clark ordered over the communication system. Escort vessels, defensive, positions around the transports. The human fleet scattered, trying to avoid the massive firepower being directed at them. The escort ships moved to intercept incoming missiles and energy beams, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Jake turned to Lisa. Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Use the emergency codes. Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. Channel open, Captain. Jake grabbed the microphone, knowing that this message might be the last thing he ever said. Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison of the Colony Fleet. We are under attack by Confederation forces at the edge of the Sol system. They never intended to let us return home. This is not an evacuation, it's an extermination. He paused, watching as another transport ship took a direct hit and began venting atmosphere. I'm implementing Protocol Omega, Authorization Code Lazarus Prime. The sleepers must awaken. Karen White, the fleet's chief communications officer, looked up from her station with surprise. Captain, what's Protocol Omega? Jake didn't answer immediately. He was watching the tactical display, where Admiral Clark's escort ships were putting up a brave fight against impossible odds. The Determination was taking heavy damage, but she was still fighting. It's something we hoped we would never need, Jake finally said. But the Confederation just made a very big mistake. Ben Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. Captain, I'm detecting some kind of response from Earth. Multiple signals are activating throughout the solar system. Dr. Foster was studying her displays with growing excitement. Captain, those aren't just signals. Something is happening on the asteroid belt mining platforms. They're changing configuration. Jake allowed himself a small smile. The Confederation thought they were dealing with a helpless refugee fleet. They thought humans were weak and frightened prey that could be hunted down and destroyed. They were about to learn the truth about humanity. The battle continued around them, but Jake could see changes beginning to happen. His message had been received, and now the galaxy was about to discover what humans had really been doing for the past 200 years. The real war was about to begin. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, General Nathan Cooper sat in the command center of Deep Space Command and watched the tactical displays showing the battle at the edge of the Sol system. The underground facility had been hidden from alien sensors for over a century, disguised as a simple research station studying Earth's geology. Message confirmed, General, reported Lieutenant Colonel Karen Adams from her communication station. Captain Morrison has transmitted the Lazarus Prime authorization. Protocol Omega is now active. Nathan stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 200 years of preparation settling on his shoulders. He had trained for this moment his entire life, just like his father and grandfather before him. 3 generations of his family had lived in secret, waiting for the day when humanity would need to reveal its true strength. Activate all Terra Defense Initiative installations, Nathan ordered. Send the awakening signal to every hidden facility in the solar system. Across the command center, dozens of technicians began working at their stations. On the massive main screen, status indicators began changing from red to green as installations throughout the solar system came online. Dr. Helen Price, director of the Terra Defense Initiative, walked over to Nathan's command station. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her eyes held the intensity of someone who had spent her life preparing for war. The Jupiter shipyards are responding, Helen reported. Admiral Richard Stone confirms that the first wave of the defense fleet is ready for launch. Nathan nodded grimly. For 2 centuries, while the galaxy thought humans were simple colonists and traders, they had been building something else entirely. Hidden shipyards around the gas giants had been constructing, vessels unlike anything the Confederation had ever seen. What about the asteroid belt platforms? Nathan asked. Helen checked her data pad. All 37 platforms are operational. The Confederation thinks they're mining facilities, but they're about to discover what we've really been mining out. There. On the main screen, Nathan could see the battle continuing near Earth. The human escort fleet was fighting bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. Admiral Clark's ships were designed to look like simple patrol vessels, but they were actually buying time for the real defense fleet to arrive. Ben Rodriguez, now working from the New Horizons engineering station, had discovered something important in the colony's data archives. His transmission reached Deep Space Command just as Nathan was reviewing the deployment orders. General Cooper, Ben's voice came through the communication system. I found evidence that the Confederation has been gathering intelligence on our colonies for years. They know about our terraforming techniques, our mineral extraction methods, even our population distributions. Nathan smiled coldly. What they don't know is that we've been gathering intelligence on them for just as long. Dr. Price activated another display screen, showing detailed information about every Confederation ship in the attacking fleet. We know the exact specifications of their vessels, the weaknesses in their shield systems, even the psychological profiles of their commanders. The information had been gathered through centuries of careful observation. Every human diplomat, trader, and scientist who had interacted with alien species had been secretly collecting data. Every cultural exchange and trade negotiation had been an intelligence-gathering operation. Nathan turned to his communications officer. Send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell him it's time to show the galaxy what human engineering can really accomplish. Far beyond Pluto's orbit, on the hidden world that humans called Sanctuary, Admiral Richard Stone received the message and smiled. He was standing on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, the flagship of humanity's secret defense fleet. Sanctuary had been humanity's greatest secret for over a century. While alien sensors detected a small research outpost studying the outer solar system, the reality was very different. The entire dwarf planet had been hollowed out and converted into a massive military shipyard. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, he announced over the fleet communication system. Operation Lazarus is now active. We launch in 10 minutes. Around Sanctuary, 50 warships began activating their systems. These vessels had been built using technology that the Confederation had shared with humanity, but improved and modified beyond anything their original creators had imagined. Tony Blake, commanding the heavy cruiser Vengeance, ran through his final system checks. His ship looked similar to human civilian vessels from the outside, but hidden beneath the hull were weapon systems that could tear apart anything the Confederation had ever built. Admiral Stone, Tony reported over the communication system. All squadrons report ready for launch. Richard looked out at the fleet he had spent his life preparing. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had trained in secret, descendants of military families who had never forgotten that the galaxy would eventually turn on humanity. Back at the battle near Earth, Captain Morrison watched as the Confederation continued their attack. Fleet Admiral Zekthul was confident that his overwhelming firepower would quickly destroy the human fleet. "Human vessels," Zekthul transmitted. "You are defeated. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Jake. Morrison grabbed his communication microphone. "Fleet Admiral Zekthul, you made one very important mistake." "And what would that be?" Zekthul asked, his voice filled with arrogant confidence. "You assumed we were helpless," Jake replied. "You're about to learn why that was a bad assumption." His tactical display, Jake could see new contacts appearing at the edge of sensor range. The defense fleet was finally arriving, and the real battle was about to begin. Dr. Foster looked up from her science station with excitement. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching our position. Whatever's coming, it's big." Admiral Clark's voice came over the communication system from the badly damaged Determination. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark. Help is on the way. Hold your positions and prepare for the counterattack." Fleet Admiral Zekthul was studying his own tactical displays when his sensor officer reported the approaching contacts. "Admiral, we're detecting 50 new vessels approaching at high speed. They appear to be human design." Zekthul laughed coldly. 50 ships against 500? The humans are even more foolish than I thought. But as the new vessels came closer, Zekthul's confidence began to fade. His sensors were showing energy readings that didn't match any known human technology. These ships were putting out power signatures that rivaled the largest Confederation dreadnoughts. "All ships prepare for enemy contact," Zekthul ordered his fleet. The first wave of the human defense fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly into the battle zone. Admiral Stone's ships immediately opened fire, and the galaxy discovered that humanity had been hiding far more than anyone had imagined. The war had truly begun. The human defense fleet dropped out of hyperspace like an avenging storm, and Fleet Admiral Zekthul immediately knew that something was terribly wrong. His sensors were showing energy readings that should have been impossible for human technology, but the evidence was right there in front of him. Commander Tony Blake led the first squadron of human warships directly into the heart of the Confederation fleet. His ship, the Vengeance, opened fire with weapons that made the space around them burn with deadly light. The first Chronari destroyer to target him simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. "All squadrons, engage at will," Admiral Stone commanded from the Retribution. "Show them what happens when they threaten our families." Captain Morrison watched from the bridge of the New Horizon as the battle transformed before his eyes. Minutes ago, his fleet had been facing certain destruction. Now, human warships were tearing through the Confederation forces like they were made of paper. Lisa Hayes stared at the tactical display in amazement. "Jake, how is this possible? Where did these ships come from?" Jake smiled grimly. "We've been planning for this day for 2 centuries, Lisa. While the galaxy thought we were simple colonists, we were building something much more dangerous." Ben Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station, his face filled with excitement. "Captain, I'm analyzing the defense fleet's weapons. They're using our own plasma drive technology, but modified in ways I never imagined possible." Dr. Foster was studying her sensor readings with growing understanding. "These ships aren't just more powerful than Confederation vessels. They're completely different in design philosophy. Look at how they're fighting." She was right. While alien warships were built for specific roles and followed predictable tactical patterns, the human vessels were adapting their combat methods in real time. A ship designed as a heavy cruiser suddenly reconfigured its systems to become a missile platform. A vessel that appeared to be a support ship transformed into an electronic warfare specialist. Fleet Admiral Zekthul watched his carefully planned attack falling apart around him. His forces had been arranged to destroy a helpless refugee fleet, not to fight against warships that seemed to ignore every rule of space combat he had ever learned. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessels," Zekthul ordered. "Focus your attacks on their flagship." The Confederation fleet redirected their weapons toward Admiral Stone's battleship Retribution, but the massive human vessel seemed to absorb their attacks without significant damage. Its shields operated on principles that Confederation science had never encountered. Commander Tony Blake noticed the enemy's change in tactics and immediately adapted his own strategy. 2nd Squadron, execute flanking maneuver 7. 3rd Squadron, electronic warfare protocol. His ships moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic. While Confederation vessels required extensive communication between their commanders to coordinate attacks, human ships operated with an intuitive understanding that came from years of training together. The Chronari hegemony's supposedly impenetrable shield technology began failing under human plasma charges that operated on completely different scientific principles. The ethereal collective's advanced computer systems found themselves overwhelmed by human cyber warfare techniques that used creativity and intuition rather than pure logic. Captain Paul Johnson, commanding the escort vessel Freedom, found himself fighting alongside vessels that made his ship look like an antique. But he quickly realized that the new arrivals were using tactics he recognized from human military doctrine. Admiral Clark, Paul transmitted to the damaged Determination. These new ships are fighting like humans, but with technology I've never seen before. Susan Clark, despite her injuries from the earlier battle, was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Paul, I think we're seeing what humanity has really been capable of all along. We just never needed to show it before. Doctor. Foster made a discovery that changed her understanding of everything they had been through. Captain Morrison, I'm detecting something incredible. The human ships aren't just using modified alien technology. They're using principles that alien science says should be impossible. She paused, checking her readings again to make sure she wasn't making a mistake. Their weapons work by destabilizing matter at the quantum level. Their shields operate by bending space-time around the ship. This isn't just advanced technology, it's revolutionary. Jake realized that humanity had been hiding more than just military preparations. They had been secretly developing scientific advances that put them decades ahead of the rest of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Zekthul was becoming desperate as he watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. His 500 ships were being torn apart by 50 human vessels, and nothing his forces did seemed to make any difference. Retreat to minimum safe distance, Zekthul ordered. We need to regroup and analyze their capabilities. But Admiral Stone had no intention of letting the Confederation fleet escape. All ships pursue the enemy. We end this here and now. The human warships pressed their attack, moving with speed and agility that defied their size. Tony Blake's squadron cornered a group of Confederation cruisers and destroyed them with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Captain Morrison realized that this battle was about more than just survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never again allow themselves to be pushed around by anyone. Ben, scan the Confederation flagship, Jake ordered. I want to know everything about their command structure. Ben's analysis revealed something interesting. Captain, their communication systems are completely centralized. If we can disrupt their flagship, their entire fleet will lose coordination. Doctor. Foster looked up from her science station. Captain, I have an idea. If we can get close enough to their flagship, I might be able to use our research equipment to jam their command frequencies. Jake nodded. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Morrison. We have a way to end this battle quickly. Admiral Stone's voice came back immediately. I'm listening, Captain. We can disrupt their command and control systems, but we need to get close to their flagship. Can your ships provide cover for a civilian vessel? There was a pause. Then Admiral Stone chuckled. Captain Morrison, I think it's time you learned something about civilian vessels. Lisa, take us in. Lisa Hayes looked confused. For a moment, then her eyes widened as she realized what Admiral Stone meant. Jake, are you saying that our ship, the New Horizon, isn't just a colony transport? Jake confirmed. Like everything else humanity has built, it has hidden capabilities. As if responding to his words, the ship around them began to change. Hidden weapon ports opened in the hull, and systems that had been disguised as life support equipment revealed their true nature. The galaxy was about to learn that humans never built anything with just one purpose in mind. The New Horizon transformed before the eyes of its crew as hidden systems came online throughout the ship. What had appeared to be a simple colony transport revealed itself to be something far more dangerous. Weapon systems that had been disguised, as mining equipment deployed from concealed compartments and the ship's power output increased dramatically. Lisa Hayes stared at her control panel in amazement as new options appeared on her displays. "Jake, this ship has capabilities I never knew existed. We're not just a transport. We're a battleship disguised as a civilian vessel." Captain Morrison smiled as he watched his ship reveal its true nature. Every human vessel built in the last century has hidden military capabilities. We learned long ago that the galaxy sees what it expects to see. Dr. Foster was studying the transformation with scientific fascination. The entire ship was designed with dual purposes from the beginning. The mining equipment doubles as weapons. The life support systems can be reconfigured as defensive measures. Even our research laboratories can function as tactical command centers. Ben Rodriguez was working frantically at his engineering station as new systems came online. "Captain, I'm detecting similar transformations happening throughout our fleet. Every colony ship is revealing hidden weapon systems." The revelation changed the entire nature of the battle. Fleet Admiral Zekthul found himself facing not just 50 military vessels, but an entire fleet of ships that had seemed helpless moments before. His 500 warships were now outnumbered by vessels that were proving far more capable than anything his intelligence reports had suggested. "All ships concentrate fire on the human flagship," Zekthul ordered desperately. "We must break their command structure." But Admiral Stone's battleship Retribution proved nearly indestructible. Its shields absorbed massive amounts of weapons fire while returning devastation with every shot. Commander Tony Blake's squadron had moved to protect the flagship's flanks, creating a defensive formation that seemed impossible to break. Captain Morrison guided the New Horizon toward the Confederation flagship, using the cover provided by Admiral Stone's forces. "Dr. Foster, are you ready to jam their communications?" Amanda Foster nodded, her hands moving quickly over her control panel. "I've modified our research equipment to broadcast on their command frequencies. When we get close enough, I can disrupt their entire fleet coordination." The approach to Zekthul's flagship was dangerous, but the human ships moved with coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Years of secret training and preparation were paying off as humanity revealed the true extent of their capabilities. Fleet Admiral Zekthul watched the approaching human vessel and realized that everything his species had believed about humanity was wrong. These weren't weak refugees fleeing from superior forces. They were predators who had been hiding their strength until the moment was right to strike. "Human vessel," Zekthul transmitted directly to the New Horizon. "I demand to know how you have hidden such capabilities from the Confederation." Jake Morrison grabbed his communication microphone, knowing that this conversation would be heard throughout both fleets. "Fleet Admiral Zekthul, you made the mistake of thinking that peaceful meant weak. You forgot that Earth's children are survivors." Dr. Foster looked up from her station. "Captain, we're in range. Beginning communications jamming now." The effect was immediate and devastating. Confederation ships throughout the fleet suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate their attacks or receive orders from their command structure. Ships that had been moving in formation began drifting apart as their commanders lost contact with each other. Admiral Stone seized the opportunity immediately. "All ships, press the attack. End this now." The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, surrounding and destroying isolated Confederation vessels. Without coordination, Zekthul's forces were helpless against the superior tactics and technology of the human warships. Commander Tony Blake led his squadron against a group of Chronari heavy cruisers that had lost contact with their flagship. His weapons tore through their shields like they were made of tissue paper, sending the alien vessels spinning into destruction. Captain Paul Johnson, commanding the escort vessel Freedom, found himself fighting alongside ships that made his vessel seem ancient by comparison. But he quickly adapted to the new tactical situation, using his knowledge of human combat doctrine to coordinate with the more advanced vessels. Within 6 hours of the defense fleet's arrival, the Confederation blockade was completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped to warn their homeworlds of what had happened. The wreckage of 500 warships drifted through space as evidence of humanity's hidden strength. Fleet Admiral Zekthul, broadcasting from his damaged flagship, as human forces surrounded him, made one final desperate attempt at negotiation. This cannot be how it ends. The Confederation will send more fleets. You cannot fight the entire galaxy. Admiral Stone's voice came back cold and final. Fleet Admiral Zekthul, you had 200 years to treat humanity as equals. Instead, you chose to see us as threats to be eliminated. Now you get to learn why that was a mistake. But the destruction of the blockade was only the beginning. Throughout the galaxy, human fleets that had been hidden for centuries began emerging from dark space around every major Confederation world. The galaxy realized too late that humanity's expansion had never been about simple colonization. It had been about strategic positioning. Commander Lisa Hayes led an assault fleet that appeared simultaneously around the Zephyrian capital world. Captain Johnson's forces materialized near the Chronari military shipyards. The ethereal collective's home system found itself surrounded by human vessels that their advanced sensors had never detected. Dr. Helen Price, broadcasting from deep space. Command on Earth revealed the scope of humanity's preparation. For 2 centuries, we have been studying every species in the Confederation. We know your weaknesses, your military doctrine, your psychological profiles. We know you better than you know yourselves. The war ended not with humanity's destruction, but with the complete collapse of the Galactic Confederation. High Chancellor Vextar, trapped in his capital system by human forces, broadcast a final message across the galaxy. The Confederation formally surrenders to human forces, Vextar announced, his voice filled with defeat. We request terms for peace. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral and speaking for all of humanity, gave a response that became legendary throughout the galaxy. You drove us from our homes and tried to exterminate our families. Peace is no longer your decision to make. 5 years later, the galaxy operated under a new order. Not through conquest, but through the simple reality that humanity had proven itself to be the dominant species. Other races now requested permission to expand into new systems. Trade routes operated under human protection. The former Confederation species discovered that human rule, while absolute, was more fair than their own governments had ever been. Admiral Morrison, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, established the new galactic law. Any species that proves they can coexist peacefully will be welcomed as equals. Any species that threatens another will face the same choice the Confederation gave us: exile or extinction. The galaxy had learned too late that humanity's greatest strength was never their technology or their numbers. It was their memory. They remembered every kindness and every betrayal, and they never forgot either one. The Confederation had driven humanity out, believing they were weak. They discovered that humans are only weak when they choose to be.